quick introduction. This is obviously going to be a podcast with my children as well. So that'll be fun.
Extra entertainment.
Huh?
I said they're just extra entertainment.
They're just extra energy. Let's see what I can do. All right, so their movie's on mute at the moment. Okay. So let me just do a quick intro. Welcome to Mirage. This is Bryan Aiello. Today we're going to be discussing Poe, and my guest is Dana, whose last name I've been afraid up to this point to pronounce. Fraedrich.
Fraedrich, yeah.
It's German.
It is very German. It's German
Yeah.
spelling. I've heard it used to be von Fraedrich, but I honestly don't know if that's true.
So royalty. I don't know what that von stands for.
Actually, I think von might have been a sign of nobility, but like I said, I honestly don't know if that's true.
I love German. My father's German.
Oh yeah?
From I don't know when, like 1776. Come to this country.
So is Aiello a German name?
No, Aiello is Sicilian.
Oh, okay.
Straight up from Naples, basically.
Okay.
So we're going to talk about Poe today.
Yes, Edgar Allan Poe.
And you've had a lot of experience with Edgar Allan Poe.
Yes, I originally came to Poe. I think I was probably about 12 or 13, which I don't know. Maybe that's too young to come to Poe. But I think I got
to beat. I was younger. I was
really?
a kid. Oh my God! Yeah, I remember The Pit and the Pendulum on vinyl.
That was my first short story by Poe, was The Pit and the Pendulum.
Maybe that's everybody's. I'm surprised it's not The Raven. I mean, honestly,
right.
But Poe, right? For the same. I mean, Poe has been there my entire life. Like every time I turn around, there's Edgar Allan Poe.
You know what? And I bet we did come to The Raven earlier, and we just didn't realize it because it's so ubiquitous. I mean, it is everywhere. I think there was an episode of Animaniacs where they did a telling of The Raven.
Animaniacs is I was 12 or 13 when that happened.
Yeah.
I was in middle school.
I don't know. Yep.
I'm positive
but
though,
yeah,
right? Warner Brothers cartoons from way back when. Bugs Bunny.
Yeah.
I have both my earbuds in. I can barely hear my kid. What's going on? Huh? Those are yours. I just gave those to you both so you could share. Do you want to share? Okay, good. So my children do not know who Edgar Allan Poe is, though. Yet. Yeah. They have not started school. I honestly, do you think The Pit and the Pendulum is a horrible story for children to read? Or enjoy, or scary, right?
I think it probably would be a little scary for a younger child, because I remember when I read it, I didn't really understand a lot about it, because it's about a Spanish Inquisition prisoner and that prisoner's experience and all the horrible things that happened to him. And I didn't understand that part of it at that time. Like, I knew what the Spanish Inquisition was, but I didn't put two and two together. And so I think that for like a much younger child, like a 5-year-old read it, they might be a little freaked out. And some of
I was freaked out. I don't know if I was freaked out. I know the recording was very scary, and the artist, the actor, was very competent in terms of setting the scene. And I pictured it as, I don't think I've ever read it, like sat down and read the story from beginning to end, because that recording is my experience with it, right? I mean, you had this guy standing on the edge of something with this pendulum basically swinging with some kind of sharp thing on the end of it, right?
He's tied down.
Oh, was he tied down? My mind as a kid, he was wandering around this thing, and this thing was just back and forth, and he didn't know where it was.
Yeah, he's tied down to like this table, and he can only move his arm from the elbow down to the hand, and he's got like a little bowl of food next to him that is heavily spiced, which is making him just crazy thirsty. And then this thing is just, and the story, I actually re-listened to it yesterday while I was driving. It was like a 10-hour drive, so I put an audiobook of a bunch of Poe on. But yeah, he is kind of like tied down to this thing, and this pendulum is just swinging above him. There's like a figure of time that's holding on to the what do you call the long skinny thing that the pendulum is attached to? The rod.
Oh my God. The pit? No, I'm joking.
Yeah. Yeah, so like this figure of time.
Yeah, the rod. I mean, it would have to be the rod.
So yeah, and it's swinging and it's just getting lower and lower and it's gonna like slice him in half, which I don't know how long he's there. It almost gives the impression that he's there for maybe even days, but I'm not sure because, you know, he keeps falling in and out of consciousness.
Wow. I mean, that's what's fascinating, right? I mean, my mind as a child conjured this story. I mean, I think maybe we talked about this. It's something I'm on now anyway, this idea that as a writer, you create just an atmosphere for your reader to kind of enjoy. Right. They basically do all the heavy lifting and you're just there to guide them along so that they don't get lost. So Edgar Allan Poe wrote this story about this pit and this pendulum and this dude that's stuck. And in my mind as a kid, he's wandering around. And the horribleness was that in front of him was this open pit that he could fall into, but there was also this thing swinging back and forth as well.
Right.
And I created a whole different story around that.
I know what you mean, because it's, like I said, it's a little vague in its telling, because he's in the dark too for part of it. Like for part of it, he can't see anything and he's like kind of wandering along the wall and like counting paces, so you're getting rats,
right?
Yeah, there are rats
and he could feel the wind back and forth hitting him. Like he knows this is happening.
Yeah, it's a really interesting story just because of the way it's told, and like the narrator is even a little bit like I said, he keeps passing out, so you don't even know like what's exactly correct and what's not, or if it's like a vision of his, you know, addled, tortured mind. It's so interesting. And you're right, the atmosphere is 100% there of just this like desperate, awful situation.
Just to make sure I sound okay, right? There's no roboting or echo or anything like that.
Nope, you sound great.
Okay. Just want to make sure, because you said something earlier and I made the mistake once of ignoring somebody who said that. It's like, hey, you're echoing a little bit. So it'll fix itself and whatever.
Right.
You know, it was horrible. I had to dip that podcast and start over again. I mean, Edgar Allan Poe, right? I mean, this is what he did. He started the detective novel, right? I mean,
he popularized it.
There was a French dude that was actually.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Lee.
No, please go ahead.
Nope, my mom was calling because I forgot to tell her not to call me.
I didn't hear it. There's a French guy, I guess, that he was writing wrong at the same time. But the funny thing about Edgar Allan Poe is he popularized a lot of things, right? I mean, American literature at that point wasn't literature.
Yeah, he was a hero, and it's so interesting. Well, I say hero. He was very popular, and people who didn't know him seemed to like love him, but people who knew him thought he was a terrible person. There was some comment in the front of my big Poe tome that I have at home. Yeah. Where like I think it was the gent who was in charge of editing his books and like promoting his books and stuff, had some really awful things to say about him when he died, because he was a little bit he was kind of unwell. I think he had a really rough life from the get-go, and I think he just was maybe he suffered from depression. I think a lot of people reckon that he did suffer from a depression, but
substance abuse. I mean, that's basic. I mean, whether there was some kind of mental anguish, alcoholic. I mean, probably like opium too in that time frame potentially. Maybe, yeah. I mean, laudanum. How do you say it? Laudanum, something like that.
Yeah, laudanum.
I mean, yeah. I mean, that guy.
But yeah, I know that's another thing.
I mean, these are all depressants, right? I mean, nobody's doing potentially cocaine and being all up and stuff. But this was Poe, right? I mean, he had a horrible life, I think.
He did. So what happened, like he's born, and his father disappeared a couple of years after he was born. Like, I guess nobody really knows what happened to his dad, which is kind of awful. And then his mom died not long after. And he was basically like, he went to live with this gent.
Boston, right? Or was it New York? Boston or New York? Something like that.
Richmond,
Virginia. Oh, yeah. Wow, okay. Oh, wow, we have a connection, don't we? I've got a connection to Poe, too.
Oh, really? What is it?
Well, I was born in Bethesda, Maryland, which is very close to Baltimore, which is where he died.
Oh, yeah, that's so cool. Yeah, he died in Baltimore. Well, he died going to Baltimore. I remember
I thought he died in the streets of Baltimore.
Right.
He died in the gutter. Anyway, we're getting ahead of ourselves. I mean, this guy, He was an orphan. He was raised by people in Boston, Richmond, Virginia. His father, right?
Yes.
He was not a poor man though. I think he was connected. I think he had money.
He did,
he hooked his son up.
Yeah, he did have money. He was a merchant.
Stepson.
And Poe's adopted father, he never got along with him for I don't know reasons. And then he was educated in England.
Yeah.
And then he came back to the U.S. I think he was in the army for like a minute, and then his father was like, "No, this is not going to work."
We have to cover his army career because it's incredibly interesting. He joined and then rose in the ranks. I think he was a first sergeant within like 2 or 3 years. And
you're going to have to tell me what a first sergeant is, because I don't know the ranks.
It's in terms of leadership, you would have a company, and a company would have a company commander who is a captain or first lieutenant. And that person would rely on a senior enlisted to basically levy the instructions down to the lower echelons of the company or whatnot. And the first sergeant would be that person. He called it top kick. He basically kicks the motion, everything into motion, basically. And that was what he was that particular time. And it didn't take him very long to get to that point. He was a first sergeant immediately, I think, like within the first 2 years.
I wonder if that was because his dad had money. I don't know.
I can't imagine it. I was in the military, and you want to rise in rank, you have to be very personable. You have to be able to talk. You have to be able to hang out and be boys. And what are we dealing with here? He was one of the boys, wasn't he? He was a heavy, heavy drinker, which means that he liked to party and get down, right? Or did he do it secretly at this time?
You know what? I don't really know. He did drink very heavily, but I don't know as far as like socially how he acted. So yeah, I really don't know. And that's one of those things is I'm not sure we have records of, what he was like on a day-to-day basis.
Well, he was stationed in Boston. He actually went to military school, the University of Virginia, United States Military Academy.
Right.
Well, I'm sorry, University of Virginia / and then the United States Military Academy. Yes. So he dropped out of West Point. And I think he also dropped out of Virginia, right?
He was kicked out of Virginia because he racked up gambling debts.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So, I mean, these are not things that people do by themselves, right? I mean, this is not an introvert. This is a guy who's out in the public, who's out imbibing, the spirits and gambling his money away and fighting publicly, right?
He might
watching people, right? I mean, he's listening to stories too. I mean, this is probably where he gets his stuff from.
Oh, he was massively influenced by Byron and Shelley, and the Romantics,
the macabre, yeah.
And so he's very, very influenced by them. And his stories feature a lot of like the Byronic hero, the person who's like misunderstood by society and apart from them, and has a deeper understanding with the world than most people. That kind of Byronic hero, which of course is still a very common trope in our writing.
Yeah, the anti-hero, right? The guy who comes in from the outside and saves the day. I have not read any of his novels either. And a lot of his work doesn't really translate to film very well.
You talking about Poe's work?
Yeah.
Poe actually, he only wrote short stories and poetry. He doesn't have any novel-length books, which is insane to me.
I thought the Purloined Letter was a novel.
Ooh, maybe it was. Maybe I'm wrong about that.
Oh, it's a short story.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe I'm wrong. I think there's some longer stuff though, right? Is there no novels?
I mean, no like novel length novels the way we're thinking of them. Everything was short stories. Murders in the Rue Morgue is a little bit longer. I listened to that for the first time yesterday. I actually and that was his detective story, which I had never read. I'd always read his poetry and a couple of his short stories. So yeah,
it's very interesting. Back in the day when you could write a short story and actually make a living from it.
Right. Well, the thing is, he didn't. Well, I guess he might have made a living had he not spent everything on alcohol. But
right.
He wrote for magazines mostly.
Yes.
So magazines
the most incredible story that I know of Poe is when he wrote The Raven and got famous. He almost made no money off of it.
I know, it's
everything
crazy.
Plagiarized. I mean, he's writing in the same type of atmosphere that we are today, right? Where anybody can get anything they want for free.
Sort of. I think there was a little bit of a gatekeeper back then, but you're right. Like it was very like
Well, you had to publish it, right? You had the ink and the press and all that, but
yeah,
other than that, you could.
People pay for it.
Nobody was going to pull you off of YouTube because you borrowed somebody's song.
Right. Yeah. And he published a book of poetry. I think it was like about a 40-page book at some point in his career. There we go. This was in, what was it? 1827. When around the time that he enlisted in the army, he published his 40-page collection of poetry. So yeah, he was kind of self-published in a way.
Yeah, all the way. Yeah, he was a publisher, wasn't he? He was an editor at some point. He was writing reviews. I mean, he was basically doing whatever it took in the wild, wild days of early America to make it sing. I mean, to make his efforts come out.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm gonna have to bribe my son with cookies, and that's going to be horrible.
Oh dear.
Bring this to your sister too, please. Thank you. So, urgent care doesn't open till noon. I think that's the most ridiculous thing in the world, especially when I live in like one of the largest metropolises in the nation.
It doesn't feel terribly urgent if you wait till noon to open.
Yeah, exactly. Go to the emergency room if you really have an urgent need to see a doctor.
Right.
I have no urgent need to see anybody. She did have a little diarrhea, but I mean, I don't think she's that bad.
Yeah.
Daycare, pain in the butts.
But it's one of those things where they have to do CYA stuff, you know?
Yeah, exactly. CYA. I had to break that acronym down a little bit. CYA, what's that? Yeah. They actually do, because they're worried about viruses and stuff. Man, when they first started there, I stayed sick for like a year. I mean, I just constantly sick. So totally understand, but I still hate them. Yeah. Not my kids, but daycare.
Oh, I
What are you doing, my boy? So Edgar Allan Poe had a family too. He married his cousin.
He did marry his cousin. She was 13. Let's see here. What was her name? I'm trying to find it. I've got the page open. Let's see here. Here we go. Yes, his second cousin, Louisa Patterson.
Louisa Patterson. Oh, that's his first wife then, because I don't have her on. I have Virginia Elisa Clem Poe.
I got the wrong one. Yeah, Louisa Patterson was his second wife. I apologize.
Was he married to her? Because I don't see her name anywhere on the Wikipedia page.
October 1830. He married.
Oh, the dude was a womanizer, huh? He likes some ladies.
he does, for sure. Yeah, although a lot of people died, which is kind of awful, and you can tell it probably influences his poetry.
I mean, we're talking about the era that everybody died. I mean, you're basically, if you lived to like 29, you're like an old man with a cane.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. I was actually listening to, also in the car yesterday. Oh gosh.
Yeah. He's being a total butt. He's got my office chair and he's standing on it and looking for my attention and waving like he's about to jump off of it. Oh my goodness. Why do 3-year-olds exist? I don't even know.
Three-nagers. I heard that phrase recently.
It's horrible. It's horrible. If you and your husband are planning having kids, change your mind right now. It's better to go.
Good. Like I have my little nieces and nephews, and that's enough for me.
And he just stepped on my foot. Did Poe have any kids? I don't think he did he?
He
that
did
we know
not,
of any.
Nope. Poe did not have any kids.
See what happens? That must have really hurt badly. Will you please stop? Can you please stop? All right. I'm going to have to murder my son.
Okay.
All right. Here, buddy. Please. And you're going to have to listen. There you go. Yeah, exactly. I mentioned it on the podcast. It's recorded by Google and the cops are on their way.
We just cut this whole bit out.
It's too late. The NSA already heard. They're like, what were we talking about? We can go back into
how everyone died.
I mean, this time was horrible. Man, I listened to a podcast on Mark Twain, who's like 40 years Edgar Allan Poe senior, and he dropped his daughter's scarf on a carriage ride through Central Park, and she died.
Oh my goodness, this is awful.
He says, and this is like the last part of his life, he was devastated by the loss of this little girl, and he's like, he blamed himself because he didn't know when her headpiece went away.
Yeah, and I was also listening on my drive-in. I know it's a different era slightly, but same kind of thing. It was Jane Austen's Sense and Sensibility, And they're talking about how this 35-year-old man is in an advanced stage of life. I was like, oh gosh.
75 years?
No, 35 is an advanced
stage. 35 years.
Yeah. Because oh, he's that gentleman. He's so old. He's 35. I'm just like, oh gosh.
What era is she writing in? I can't remember.
Oh goodness. I think she was just a wee bit. Actually, she might have been a contemporary of Poe's because she was not a fan of the romantic. She thought they were a little bit too romantic. So let me look her up real quick.
But when we're saying romantic, we're not meaning romantic in the way that we think today with lovers and movement. So, what that means, I'm gonna have to look it up. I got my degree in English, but it's not like I paid attention. So
yeah. Well, Jane Austen, she was 1775 to 1817, so she died a little bit before Poe was doing most of his work.
Holy shit! He died on my birthday.
No way.
Yeah, he died on my birthday.
So now, when you have a birthday party, you can be like, you can just raise a glass to Poe.
I think I should. Yeah. I really do feel a connection to him. I mean, when I heard the story of the mysterious, what is it, a rose dropper? What did they drop on his grave every year in Baltimore?
Oh yeah, there was someone who, I forget they had a fancy name for it, but there was a person who would drop roses on his grave every year.
Every
it became
year.
A tradition.
On his birthday or his death day?
I think it might have been on his birthday. And then that stopped for a couple of years. They thought whoever was doing it might have passed away or something. So I think there's now like more of an official movement that does that. So less secretive.
Does it?
More, yeah. Because
very interesting.
There's a museum to Poe in Baltimore, which I really want to visit because my family is pretty close. Like, it's only 2 hours away. I should really make it up there.
Well, do it. Why not? You drive up there before you go home.
I might do. Unfortunately, every time I visit, we make a lot of plans.
Oh, I see. I mean, you live in Nashville, so your family must want to get a little tiny taste of you anyway.
Exactly. Yeah. My mom, it was so funny. She actually stalked me a little bit, which on my website. So when we were planning this trip, she calls me. She's like, I see on your website you're coming to Virginia in August. We need to plan a baby shower for your sister. So
your sister's gonna have one of these things, huh?
Yeah, my not the sister I'm staying with, my twin sister. So yeah, she's gonna have one now too, which is really great because she is so excited. She's wanted a baby forever. So.
Okay. Do you know what she's having?
No, she's doing the surprise thing. She's gonna find out when the baby's born.
Oh wow, that's horrible. I could not have done that.
Oh, it would make me insane. I would never do that.
I needed to know immediately.
They
let us know they let us know immediately. I just couldn't wait. Just had to know.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. So you've read all of his work. You've read all the short stories.
I've read most of it. I've not read all of it, although I mean to. I have a big tome of Poe to work through at home, and like I said, I listened to a lot on my way here yesterday in the car because, like I said, it was 10 hours. I got to do something. There's a really great app called LibriVox, which you can get a free version. It's got little ads on the free version, or you can pay like $3 for the ad-free version. And it's got loads of audio recordings of classic literature. Everything on it is in the public domain. So I just kind of queued that up and I listened to a ton of his stuff yesterday while I was driving.
So what do you think? As a 21st century girl, what do you think of this 19th century boy?
I think it stands up. I absolutely do. I mean, the atmosphere, I'm not good with poetry. I have like a 5-year-old's understanding of poetry, but I know that when I hear it, it's gorgeous. Like The Bells, for instance, is a poem that is very, well, I mean, everything he wrote was atmospheric, but so you've got basically like 4 stanzas, and just he starts talking about different kinds of bells, like little tinkling sleigh bells and these very alarming fire bells, and like he describes the different ways that each bell, quote unquote, speaks, and it's beautiful, just his repetition and the language he uses. And I'm sure there are fancy schmancy poetic ways to describe this that I'm not doing justice, but I don't know those.
Well, I wouldn't be able to help you out. Yeah.
So yeah, I think it absolutely stands up.
Isn't that the story about the funeral carriage? The poem about the funeral carriage?
The funeral carriage is included in that, yeah, where it's talking about the mellow bells of the funeral carriage. Actually, I think the mellow was used for the wedding bells, but yeah, the funeral carriage bells are mentioned as one of the types.
I think I remember one theory being that was about the death of his first wife or something along those lines.
Oh, it might have been.
Hey, Hank, don't hang on that, buddy. Sorry.
Yeah, she died very young. Well, she also married very young, so.
I mean, he died at 40. I mean, I'm 41, and I'm already dead if I'm him. I can't even imagine that. He died, and he was already an old man, right? I mean, he had so many freaking problems that they put him in fake clothes and made him vote. And they did, what do they call it? They dead man voted him or something like that? Dead man vote? Where they made him...
I know nothing about this.
Yeah, they think this is what happened at the end of his life. That they gave him alcohol until he blacked out, and then basically walked him through presidential elections over and over and over again until he died.
Oh, right. I do think I remember something about this.
Yeah. I mean, he might have been alcohol poisoning or something, or they drugged him significantly, but he died on October 7th. And I think that was a presidential election day, or a few days after, or something along those lines. So the bender just kept going and going and going.
Yeah. Oh,
what a time to be an American, too. I mean, you're 30 years into the democracy. I mean, you're 30 years into this whole experiment.
Yeah.
And this guy, I mean, he couldn't care less, right? I mean, he's basically just a piece of crap human being. 22 years old. He's out of the military. He lied to get into it, right? 18 years old. He lied. That was his first lie as an adult about his age.
Oh, I don't know if it was his first. Years. I mean, we did say he likes the ladies.
As an adult.
That was his first
lie. He married at 40 in 1845. He married his 13-year-old cousin. So he's 37 years old. He married a 13-year-old.
No, he was 26. It looks, at least according to this thing I'm reading, it was 1835.
Well, this is Virginia Clem, his 13-year-old cousin. Oh, I'm sorry. 1836. He married her.
Oops.
Whoops. So that's 13 years.
Ignore me.
You're right. My bad. He was very 27 or something like that. Still, 14 years. Right now,
sure.
You're not even allowed to like Chris Hardwick anymore, right? I mean, people are all about these indiscretions. And yet, if you're a 13-year-old in middle school, they're going to pull out the Raven and you're going to read it.
Yeah.
Aren't you? I mean, it doesn't matter anymore, historically, what happens. And it really takes a lot of the bite out of the Me Too movement, I think, in a way that you don't acknowledge the things that historical men have done or historical figures have done that have been horrible, right? Well, this guy's a statutory rapist.
There's still a number of states in this country that allow for child marriage where it's the legal marrying age is under 18 if you have parental consent. So it's still very much a problem.
But if Stephen King divorces Tabitha and marries his 13-year-old cousin, even in Alabama or wherever the hell that's legal, people are still going to say
you're far off.
Yeah, I think it's Mississippi, Alabama, Virginia, one of those really. No, I'm joking. Virginia is actually really liberal right now, isn't it?
It is.
Not doing too bad.
I'm pretty proud of Virginia right now.
You have the transgendered representative. Oh my goodness, why is this happening? You guys want to go outside? No, thank you. Let's go outside, guys, because you're driving your father crazy. Our flood area.
Oh yeah, I saw your flood picture on Twitter. That was crazy.
Yeah, man, we had some really bad stuff.
Did you
People's
have
houses
that you had to take care of?
No, thank God it didn't hit us that bad. It like stopped. The rain. I mean, I looked at my sliding glass door and I'm just like, oh man, we're gonna die.
Oh goodness.
5 minutes later, it slowed down and stopped. But there was some devastating stuff in this town.
Yeah. Yeah, that's nuts.
There you go, my friend. All right. You guys want to go outside and hang out? Do not go very far, please.
I'm not going to.
So 12 years old, you discover Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah.
You don't see his movies, right? There's no movies, no famous movies of Edgar Allan Poe's stuff.
Not really. I remember we watched a quote unquote a version of the Black Cat in college. It was not the Black Cat. It was some other crazy.
Oh, I've seen this.
It's like, is it the old black and white one where there's like a cult?
I don't know. I thought it was. I thought it had that real famous guy, Price.
Oh, right. He did do a bunch of Poe stuff, didn't he?
I think so. Yeah.
No,
you see a lot of stuff being made then.
Pre-Price. It was a terrible film.
Is Edgar Allan Poe a good short story writer? I mean, do you read short stories otherwise? I mean, because they don't make stories out of his stuff anymore, do they?
I don't think so. I wonder. Yeah, I don't know why. Because I think some of them are really interesting. Like I said, The Pit and Pendulum, I think, is a really interesting tale, though I'm sure they would have to put in loads more stuff like they did with The Hobbit, which they didn't have to do. Sorry, bitter.
Yeah, The Hobbit was bad. I only watched the first part.
Oh,
I think the second part, and what was it? Maybe I watched the second part too. I don't remember
awful.
it. But the third part was they had the barrel riding scene, right? In the very beginning of it.
That was in the beginning of, which one was it? I think that was the beginning of the second one, maybe.
Well, I stopped watching it immediately. They had Legolas there, and it was like animated horribly.
Yeah.
And I had already forgiven them from the trolls, which looked like crap too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, first I got to stop watching stuff on my computer. You know, I don't have no clue if this is like better in the movie theater or not, but it looked like total crap on my laptop.
It wasn't great, I can tell you, because I saw all three in the theater, and it was just disappointing. But yeah, so I think they would, if they did like a movie version of The Pit and the Pendulum, they'd have to fill it with a whole bunch of extra stuff, and then they have to do that. Yeah, because I mean, the same thing with the Black Cat. The Black Cat is another really interesting story, as is the Telltale Heart. But I mean, they're little. Like, you could not make a feature-length film out of them.
Okay, tell me the story in the Black Cat, as you recall it.
And so many of his stories are, descents into madness. He wrote that a lot: death, descents into madness, and getting old. The three things that people are very afraid of. And so this was another descent into madness tale. He grew up and he loved animals, and he had this cat as an adult. It was a black cat. He loved this cat, but then somehow he started getting very angry with the cat. And I think that this was also a illustration of his drinking life, where maybe he started drinking more and more, and that made him into a violent person. And so he started being violent around the cat. The cat, of course, starts to avoid him and not love on him anymore because trying to kick the cat. And then he eventually goes crazy, and he kills his wife while trying to kill the cat. And he at one point he even like carved the cat's eye out with a penknife.
Oh my God!
Awful. Yeah, it was terrible. So he ends up killing his wife while trying to kill the cat, and then he walls his wife up in the wall, like behind bricks.
Oh yeah, this is the Black Cat.
Yes, the Black Cat is a great story.
That's a classic. 'Cause I've heard that brick behind a wall story before.
He did that in the what was it, the not the Cast of Amontillado? Yes, I think it was the Cast of Amontillado.
Maybe you're right. Yeah. I want to say the Telltale Horror, but that's the one he buries the guy into the floorboards or something, and the heart keeps beating. Yeah.
That one's so good.
No, that's a good one. I mean, these are really good moments.
I love it.
That's what he does, isn't it? He doesn't write like prolonged plots like George is at the store and George has an insight about blah, blah, blah. Then George enacts on his insight or whatever. It's more like George is now going crazy. This is the moment that everything is up to this point is worked for, right?
Yeah.
George is crazy. George is losing it. This is why George is losing it, but George is going to lose it by the end of the story, and you're going to see the results. But we don't really get to see anything else, do we?
No, yeah, he's in and out. Like, it's just like a little snippet of a small scene that's happening. Because what is it? Follow the House of Usher was same thing. Like, he goes and visits his friend. His friend seems kind of weird, and then you find out that like his friends buried his sister alive, and there might have been some incest stuff happening. Like, yeah, he's in and out, and he's done, and it's amazing. It's just dripping with this like gothic atmosphere. It's so good. I love it.
Fall of the House of Usher is what I saw that in high school. Fall of the House of Usher. It was.
Did they make a film of it?
Yeah, and I think that is with. Of course, you can. Do you want to go outside with it? No, you want to sit there? Okay. What am I looking for? That guy. What is his name? Price. Vincent Price.
Yeah.
Vincent Price is in it.
So interesting.
Right? I mean, they made these movies in the 50s and 60s. They made these movies at the same time they were making Dracula and Frankenstein and all that.
Are they full-length movies, though?
It's a full-length movie.
Oh, my goodness. How do you fit, because there's not really that much that happens.
Okay, I'm going to yell at my son. Hold on a second. Hanky, buddy, come on, man. We've been talking for 21 minutes, I think.
Oh, wow.
And we have another 39 minutes to go, and my son is driving me absolutely crazy. Everything he shouldn't do, he's doing. All right. No, we're not going to play Labyrinth, buddy. You know what we're going to do? We're going to go take a nap. It is nap time. Is it nap time, guys? Or is it lunchtime? Let's go upstairs and have some lunch. Shut that door. Come on, come inside. No, you're not staying outside because we're going upstairs to have some lunch. Come on. There you go, jump. All right. So can you look up the hall of the house? I was trying to find the running time on it. I think it's a few hours. And a couple, I think it's a long ass movie, and I think Vincent Price is in it. And you know what? I think it's horrible. I think it's really, really awful.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Like I said, there's not really that much like as far as action that happens. So much of it is I'm looking it up for you right now.
Thank you.
There's so much that happens.
Guys, come here. Up here. Up here. Come upstairs. If you come upstairs, I'll let you have some. Come on. Oh my God, my whole life is bribing.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to turn a movie on. Maybe this will work.
Okay.
All right, let me see this. I'm sorry to interrupt you. What were you saying? This is, thank you so much for doing this, by the way.
Oh, sure thing.
This will probably be the last time you do a podcast with me, unfortunately. But
no, it's fine. I understand. I mean, kids, you gotta do what you gotta do.
I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed our last conversation, and I was really hoping to duplicate it now, but no, my children are being nightmares. Let's watch a movie. What do you want? An icy pop? Did I already give you an icy pop? Did I give them an icy pop on this podcast?
Yeah, you gave me one.
I promised, but did I give them to them?
Oh, I don't know.
I don't think I gave it to him. That's probably why he's being so in my face. Which one do you want? You want green?
Yeah.
All right, guys. Let's go see if we can find that movie we were watching. What's the weather like in Virginia?
It's gorgeous right now. It's
what's the weather like? Temperature.
It's 81, which is a little warm, but I mean Nashville's sticky and 90, so I really can't complain too much.
Yeah, that's horrible. Where do you live at in Virginia? Well, whereabouts in Virginia near do you live?
Well, I grew up in a little town called Manassas, but my family's moved out to like a little more of the country.
Oh, Manassas, really?
Manassas, yeah.
Some nice history. My God.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We have the battlefields and everything.
Do you Okay, what are we gonna watch, guys? Let's watch that surfing movie again. Why did you do this? What's that surf movie with the penguins called? Surf Up or something like that?
There's Happy Feet with penguins.
Yeah, let's watch Happy Feet. .5. That's not good. Manassas. Do you like history?
I do enjoy history, but I've never really been a good student of it. Usually it's
how do you be a good student of history?
I think if you're a good student of history, if you get into like all the grimy, deep details, and not just the highlights. Like I like the highlights, but people who can be like, oh, well, what happened in 1781 was, you know, this slow period where our country is being built up and there's like nothing. I actually don't know what happened in 1781. I'm sort of making this up, but exactly, which is why I'm not a good student of history. But yeah, like
we were still in the Revolutionary War in 1781.
Were we? Oh yeah, right. Because 1776 is when we declared right. So that's a bad example because we were busy fighting for independence. But yeah, like all the people who can get into the dates and know all the little details and the cultural situation at the time, all of that stuff. I don't know. I'm not good with a lot of that stuff. Like I know the highlights. My older sister's far more of a history buff than I am, and she can tell you all kinds of stuff. The only thing about history though is that it's kind of colored by whoever's telling the tale. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? You don't really get the perspective of the people that got their butts kicked. Right.
Like we don't have that many historical records from, say, women of the time or African Americans of the time. Like all of our records are pretty much from, older white dudes. And so we have that coloring of it.
The unfortunate thing though, as well, there aren't a lot of written languages besides English or the European languages that had these moments in history that we could collect information from.
Not ones that,
I mean, Genghis Khan
on a global scale. Yeah, Genghis Khan was an earth shaker, but there were no
right. But when he went through cities, I mean, he's an illiterate, right? I don't know if he read or not. I don't know what kind of education the Mongols had. I don't know if they cared about words or whatnot. But all I do know about Genghis Khan is that when he went into a place that had literature, that had books, that had records of their civilization, he destroyed it. Yeah. And then he killed every other person. So, I mean, this is history outside of Europe, because you didn't really have that coming through Europe. I mean, if Genghis Khan had turned, northwest as opposed to southwest, then maybe we would have been a different story. Because I don't think Europeans could have just stopped Genghis Khan at that time. Right?
Oh, yeah, I don't know. Because didn't he, oh, goodness, again, this is me being a terrible student of history. Was it?
Well, you have to be as a writer, though, and imagine. Yeah, no, it didn't. Right? It kind of stopped him.
I don't know, to be honest.
Or did he go around the Great Wall together? I'm not sure, but I know it was built because of him, or the monsters in the north, which I think he was a part of.
Right. Yeah. If you watch that one film, you can see it's more than just the Mongols.
But that was Edgar Allan Poe too, wasn't it? He had a monster during his lifetime. He had English, didn't he? When was he born? What year? 1826. He was married at 27. So does it make 1799? 1801?
He was born in 1809.
1809. So he was 4 years old during the War of 1812 or so. So that probably wasn't something he remembered.
Probably not.
But he still joined the military, right? In Virginia.
And I wonder how much of that was, I have to do something with my life. Like, this is what I want to know. I want to know his reasonings. Like, I want to know his thought processes, which of course we can't know. But
well, let's do it. I mean, this is speculating. When did he get kicked out of Virginia, and what did he get kicked out of Virginia for? Was it gambling, you said?
It was gambling debts, yeah.
So what's interesting to me is that he went to the University of Virginia, and then he went to West Point. So, I mean, one of them is incredibly hard to get into. Takes money, takes a political appointee, basically, to get in. I mean, this is not just walking up to the gates and saying, I want to be an officer. You have to really work those strings hard. Now it is, and I assume then too, because, I mean, they're trying to match European officer corps, right? Make it kind of like the elite of the military.
Right.
But nothing's working out for him. I mean, he's getting kicked out. He's quitting. I mean, where is the shadow at that's following him? Is it a stepfather, or is it his father?
I think that, honestly, I can't help but wonder how much of a part maybe mental illness played in his life, because I don't know if they had actual diagnoses back then, but I think it's generally accepted that he suffered from some kind of depression.
Well, yeah. I mean, he's drinking and doing the depressive drugs, right? I mean, these are not, I mean, he's going to be hungover when he's hanging out with normal society anyway. He's probably not going to be the animated party hound that other people know him as, because he's not happy.
Yeah. And I don't know, like, obviously I don't know his thought processes, but I can't help but wonder also, like, just all the people who died early in his life, when his mother died the year after his father disappeared and whatnot, like, I can't help but wonder how much that, would stuck to him rather.
In modern day literary world, you mean?
I mean, as a person, when he was growing up, like his mother dying and then his father disappearing, and him going to live with this family that he had never met. Actually, maybe he had met them. I don't know.
How old was he when his dad left, or when he lost his family, when he went to live with his stepdad?
He was like a year old. His father disappeared in 1810. He was born in 1809, and then his mother died the following year. So he was little. Like, he probably wouldn't have remembered this, but he never got along with his adopted father. He had all these gambling problems and drinking problems. So yeah, I don't know. And I don't know if I don't know what his personality
was. I mean, it's so interesting. 1 year old is interesting. What was his father's attitude towards him? Oh, you're just the adoptive kid, or you're important? Because he went to West Point, right? He went to college. People don't go to college in this time. People don't know how to read and write like this dude knows how to read and write.
People with money do. Like, that's the thing. It's like, education was considered important, but you had to be able to pay for it.
So maybe this dude is the first case of affluenza more than anything else, right? I mean, he had everything handed to him. Whatever happened to his mom and dad really shouldn't have affected him, right? He was given every chance to succeed, and yet, yes, he came close. And yes, history will probably know him forever, along with Shakespeare. He's one of America's forefathers in terms of literature. there are very few people that come before him, really. I mean, who do you have? Champlain or James Fenimore Cooper?
Sure
I mean,
how many, like who was an American poet who was
nobody really,
like,
right? I mean,
before,
this is the pioneer days. Nobody cared about America. That was where you went to lose yourself into the wilderness, I would imagine.
Right.
Or as far as what I heard anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But here's this dude, 1 year old, lost his mom and dad. He's not an alcoholic at 1 year old, right?
No,
maybe
fair
he's
enough.
got, maybe he's depressed. I mean, some people think that comes along with genetics and it has nothing to do with environment, but I'm not one of them. I mean, I think
don't
that
know
every
enough
human,
about it to make a determination, so.
Maybe he was molested. Maybe he was beaten.
We don't know, yeah.
Oh my, you want Dolly? Okay, hold on a second. I mean, you don't know what happened to the guy, but obviously something, because he died at 40 years old, basically having succumbed to alcohol poisoning or something along those lines. I mean, we know nothing good happened.
I mean, maybe he's just disaffected by life. I don't know.
No war, right? We can't even give him PTSD. Even when he was in the military, they saw him as an intelligent person and gave him opportunity, gave him the chance to succeed. I mean, he got out as a first sergeant, he got his rank and still screwed that up too. So there's 3 opportunities right there that he's blown off. And then what does he do?
Yeah. I would love to sit down and chat with him to find out, what his thought processes about things are. Because like I said, I know he was very influenced by the Romantic movements and, the big romantics, Byron and Shelley and stuff. But I don't know if that is why he's so the way he was. Because, the Romantics were very, they were not quite like anti-society, but they were all about, the feeling and the heart. Because the Romantic movement started as a reaction in part to the Industrial Revolution. So the Romantic movement is everything opposite to machines. Like it's about feeling and soul and nature and all this kind of stuff, whereas, machines are cold and lifeless and there's nothing.
Industrialization in 1826?
Like the Industrial Revolution.
When was that? Did that start running around that same time?
Well, it was before, because the Romantics came before Poe. And so that all happened previous to Poe, but like I said, the Romantic movement was huge. And so, like I said,
I look at his Wikipedia page, and honestly, this is all I have to go by because I think my education was horrible. His literary styles and themes go from Gothic to dark Romanticism to transcendentalism. And the dark Romanticism is the closest to the Romantics, possibly, right? It's a subgenre of Romanticism and reflects a popular fascination with the irrational and demonic and grotesque, often conflated with Gothism, which is not that. It has shadowed the euphoric Romantic movement ever since its 18th century beginnings, and Edgar Allan Poe is celebrated as the supreme exponent of the tradition. But I don't think it has much to do with the industrial movement necessarily, because that happened at the turn of the 20th century, like after the Civil War basically kicked that off, like the industrialization of war basically, and then from there on you have all these factories basically kicking out stuff. Remember the fog, and that's where your genre starts in, right? The industrial movement. Yeah.
But we started having machines before the big industrial revolution, and I think that disconcerted a lot of people when you have a single machine taking over a job for someone, and people are like, wait a second.
It would have been scary, right? I mean, you got your first automobile happening in like 1796 or something along those lines. Like your first like steam powered, here's a thing that's going on the ground that's not being pulled by anything but itself. Yeah, that'd have been pretty freaking scary, right? I mean, there's sails, but nothing on land. Yeah. But I mean, we're talking about a blending of the supernatural with realism in a way, right? Why is this black cat behaving like this? And when you're reading it, you're going, oh, it's because you're beating the cat.
Right.
But the Edgar Allan Poe's idea, I think, is the idea that the cat is possessed, right? It's got a demon in it.
He calls it a demon and all kinds of stuff.
But you're like, no, dude, stop. And then he kills the cat. And you're like, no. As the reader, you're like, dude, stop. You're being crazy. And as the character is like, oh, this cat is out to get me.
And that's the thing, is like so many of his characters were insane. Like, I mean, the Telltale Heart opens with, "You think I'm crazy? I'm not crazy. Would a crazy person do this? Let me tell you my story." And it's just like,
Yes.
what?
And that's
Yeah,
the interesting thing about this, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's created so many tropes in the mid 19th century that are still being utilized today.
Yeah.
I mean, Edgar Allan Poe and the Simpsons Halloween special go hand in hand for like 30 years now.
I've never seen that.
What?
I know.
How?
I was not allowed to watch The Simpsons.
Now I know you're a Soviet spy. I know this. I know it.
I wasn't allowed to watch The Simpsons growing up. And then I just never really got into it. I guess my parents didn't like it. I don't know. I was allowed to watch other stuff, but yeah, just not The Simpsons.
You grew up very religious, or?
No, not at all. But like, there were certain things my parents just
was crass.
didn't approve of.
It was crass. How old are you?
Wait, how old am I? Oh, right, I'm 34. I forgot.
Were you just gonna say you're 20 something?
I did, and then I was like, no, wait, that's not right.
Yeah, so you're not that much younger than me. You're like 7 years younger than me.
Okay.
You're about the same age as my sister, actually.
Okay.
You born 83?
84.
84.
Yeah.
But so yeah, man, we're the same generation. You're a millennial. I'm just outside of that. I don't know what I am.
My older sister is like just at the top cusp outside of the millennials. We were just talking about that.
What is she? 78?
She's no. She was 83. So I think she's just outside of the millennial period or whatever.
It's so fluid. I mean, it really all depends. Mm-hmm. I consider myself a millennial just because I graduated college in 2005.
There you go. Yeah.
It put me right in the technological crux and the whole thing that happened to you guys. But if I had gone to college right out of high school, I would be in my wife's generation, which is Generation X or Generation Y, one of those.
I can't remember which one is which.
I mean, which one do you count me as? You know, I mean, I was in the military, peacetime.
Right.
I didn't have to fight Afghanistan or Iraq like all millennials had to do, basically. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So,
but I couldn't imagine life without this technology. I was just thinking about telephone books the other day. Having my name in a telephone book. It's like, wow, that's not going to happen.
Like I was thinking about, like, if I didn't have my computer, my phone, you know, all the convenient appliances in my life, like, I can't say I'd be a huge fan. And maybe that's why.
A big fan of what? What'd you say you're a big fan of?
I wouldn't be a huge fan of not having all my appliances.
Oh, I know, man. I was watching Fargo season 3. I think it's the one where have you seen the TV show Fargo?
No, I don't really like dramas, which is funny because I read a lot of Gothic.
This was so good. It starts out with this basically this UFO sighting and this accident, and this woman hits her head and blah blah blah. But it takes place in the 70s, and it shows this couple's living room. And they had a stack of National Geographics over here and a stack of newspapers over there, and they're whatever gigantic tube television or whatever. And I just thought to myself, wow, that's it. Like, in terms of entertainment value, that's all the house had: those geographics, those newspapers, and those 3 channels in that TV.
Right. And, you know, I think that there are some writers who are now starting to write in, like, in the 90s and 80s and before, like Stranger Things is set in the 80s, where, you know, so you don't have the cell phones and everything to contend with. Like, you still have so many things that are barriers to good communication. Because now, you know, there's a lot of jokes about, you know, if Romeo and Juliet happened and we had cell phones, Romeo and Juliet would just be texting each other, "Hey, I heard you're dead. Are you alive?" "Yep." "Cool. Okay." And then, like, everyone lives happily ever after. Whereas, you know, before all of that technology, like, you couldn't communicate with people directly, just in, you know, the blink of an eye. So I think I know one of my writer friends, he's working on a story that's set in the 90s so that he doesn't have to deal with all that.
That's interesting.
Yep.
I mean, ultimately, I don't know. I mean, I've written, cell phones are annoying to write about.
Oh gosh.
They really are. I mean, you've got a physicality.
They solve a lot of problems.
They do.
They kind of take away from the conflict.
Kind of. I mean, you still have miscommunications, which are very important in terms of, you know, people not seeing eye to eye. But in terms of communication, have you ever read Clan of the Cave Bear?
I have not, no.
Oh man, it's the most frustrating book about communication ever. It's like, why don't they just talk to each other? And we're dealing with like prehistoric man, basically.
Right.
And I guess the author's idea is that they can't tell each other that they love each other because that's not a word in their language or something along those lines.
Right.
It's like the most bothersome thing because she's like kind of floating between several male characters. And you're like, you asshole, no.
And is it Jean Owl? That's the name of the author?
Yeah, that's who it is. And that's not who I was going to say it was because I would mispronounce her name. I'm such a horrible mispronouncer. Yeah, she's so good.
Yeah, and I heard that I've heard that she really does her research too. She's not like, this is how I bet cave people lived. Like, I think she has done a ton of research.
No, yeah, I totally read those books and had a sense of prehistoric life in a way that I never did. The first one, Clan of the Cave Bear, is about Neanderthals, and man, it was just, you want to write something like that as an author.
Mm-hmm.
This is brilliant. That's like 1970s, 1980s, something like that. Dana Harrell, what's her name?
I was going to say Jane Owl is her name. A-U.
No, who's Daryl Hannah is the actress who played.
Oh, I didn't know they made a film.
Yeah, they did. It's horrible. Thank you, sweetheart. It's swishy. They're being so nice. They're watching Incredible Hulk. Meet up for. I'm not really quite sure if this is appropriate for 3-year-olds, but my son is all about the Incredible Hulk right now.
You know what? One of my nephews really likes him too. Which is funny because I don't find the Hulk to be a relatable character, but a lot of kids apparently do.
I do. I find it relatable because I think all men have that tendency to just flip the fuck out and be mad for no reason whatsoever. Yeah, just, you don't like me when I'm mad. And all wives are like, and just shake your head, look at us like we're pitiful creatures. Oh, shut up. That's the life of a man. I mean, that's an interesting juxtaposition, or segue actually from Edgar Allan Poe or comic books back into Edgar Allan Poe. Do you think he had any influence on modern day science fiction and fantasy?
Ooh, that's interesting.
Where does his literary style show up?
Yeah, he doesn't really write anything speculative. Everything's about like madness and darkness and
I mean, his characters think that things are coming after him, right? Yeah. The Raven is Eleanor. Yeah. I mean, haunting him because of the whatever. I mean, God, man, what does this guy do in his life? To say,
I think he probably has had a huge influence, but I don't know if it's as, for lack of a better word, tangible as, say, some other authors. Like, I think so much of his like kind of atmosphere and style has kind of bled through to current literature. But like I said, I mean, I can point to Jules Verne and H.G. Wells as like a direct influence as far as the technology and style on my writing.
No, they were contemporaries. Your style. Okay, yeah, I got you. Because I mean, they're writing in your era. I mean, they're writing about what you're writing about, basically. You're just taking what they didn't know and using it.
I mean, I suppose if you are a modern Gothic writer, like I don't know if Stephen King was influenced by Poe, probably, if I had to guess.
Had to have, right? I mean, I don't know. He doesn't really have that romantic flair, right?
But
I mean,
when you read like that bloody Gothic.
Yeah, he does. So in that sense, who is getting their fiction from Poe next? Poe dies in 1841, or when did he die? 1826. Oh, Edgar, where are you? He looks like John Scalzi, by the way.
Who's John Scalzi?
Science fiction author.
Oh, I don't know what any authors look like. Unless you're on my Instagram, I don't know what you look like.
Here, pull up a picture of John Scalzi and put him right next to Edgar Allan Poe. Yeah.
It's a fun game. I like this. Yeah. Images. Let's see here. Oh, I can see it.
Right? I think John Scalzi is Edgar Allan Poe's predecessor, ancestor, or actually, what is it called?
Descendant?
Co-descendant. My God, my brain doesn't want to work.
Okay.
And also, John Wilkes Booth looks just like Edgar Allan Poe.
Yes, I have seen that, and that is very interesting because they were both born to actors.
I wonder if Edgar Allan Poe isn't the grandfather of John Wilkes Booth.
I don't know. That's a really good question.
I also wonder if Edgar Allan Poe didn't kill his first wife.
Oh.
Because why do all his stories, and I can think of 3 right now, being the Raven, being the prolonged heart, and being the one
you mean
Black Cat, where
the telltale heart?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
That there's a dead person that's haunting.
There's so much
grave.
death. Yeah. I don't know.
And the Spanish Inquisition, right? When did the Spanish Inquisition end? 16th century?
I don't know that. I was thinking about that, and I have no concept of when the Spanish Inquisition happened. Again, bad history.
We're talking about an Inquisition, aren't we? We're talking about somebody being tortured for something they know, something they believe, something they did, something that is going to haunt them against the establishment for the rest of their lives. And that's kind of like that pit in the pendulum, right? I mean, it's kind of like this thing that's constantly there, this fear that you're either going to fall into the pit or you're going to get sliced in half by the pendulum. But regardless, you're going to die because you did something wrong to end yourself up in this room. But all of these.
Although I wonder,
all of these stories are like haunting him, basically, or haunting somebody.
Yeah, I wonder. And the pit and the pendulum is really interesting because it's religious persecution. And I wonder if that had an effect on that story for him, because he doesn't really write about like religious-y type stories, but the Inquisition was, very like infamously religious persecution.
But doesn't he though? He's writing about demons though. He's writing about possessions. He's writing about devils and being haunted, right, from the other side. I mean, we are dealing with death here, and we are dealing with an afterlife where something is haunting these characters, which is religious.
Sorry, right? I guess I more meant like from a theological standpoint.
Well, yeah, he's not talking about Jesus, right? He's not talking about God necessarily.
Exactly. Yeah, but he's going the opposite way. He mentions angels, he mentions demons, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, he can't in this era, I don't think, and especially with Gothic writing, you cannot have that stuff. You cannot not have that stuff in it.
Yeah, and I think regarding your question earlier as to influencing modern authors, I think he definitely does influence modern authors, just like with his style and whatnot. I guess I was thinking more like retellings when I was like, I don't know.
I think you could give Anne Rice's credit for him. I think definitely she gets a lot of her work.
For sure.
I don't know. I mean, there's definitely a lot of authors who have kind of this dark purpley prose, right, where horrible things happen, and there's a sexiness to it, right? There's like this illicit element to it where you're getting turned on, but you're disgusted at the same time.
Right. It's like, this is terrible. I shouldn't be into this. I'm super into it.
Yeah. This is my cousin, but it's the best sex ever or whatever. I mean, that's basically what Edgar Allan Poe is doing. He's writing about these horrible, horrible things. I mean, he's drunk, right? I mean, he starts out sober. He starts out completely resistant to anything that would be a violation of his ethics or whatnot. But as the evening goes along, those ethics start getting a lot more sloppier, right? And at the end of the night, he's probably more willing to kill somebody than he was in the very beginning. So it's interesting.
It is interesting
that he writes about possession, or he writes about. I mean, these are interesting stories. But again, like I said, I mean, you've been inundated with him, right? I mean, he basically drowns you in words. He's everywhere. He's our culture. I
don't think he does drown you with words, because, like I said, his stories are.
No. I'm saying in history, he's pulled from history. And he's all over us. I mean, he's so much in our culture and our society, like Shakespeare. I mean, you cannot have him. He's all over the place. Nevermore. I say that word. What do you think of The Raven?
Of course.
I mean, I tell you about, a heart pumping in a box. You think of the story that I'm going to make, The Telltale Heart, right? What is it called?
There you go. You got it.
I got it right that time.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. What an interesting guy. Going back, I mean, I don't think you can have horror fiction without him.
Oh gosh, no.
I think
no.
Right? I mean, I think it's gotten warped though. I mean, it's gone beyond the "is this really happening?" to "this is really happening." Be scared.
Do you know? I don't know, because I feel like it just depends on who's the writer is as to how they handle things. Because there's so many times where the movies where you think that there's like a monster, and then it just turns out that the monster is really the main character who has like a split personality issue or something.
Oh, it's good. Shattered.
Right? Yeah. Oh no, was it Shattered? Was that the name of it? The one with James McAvoy?
Yeah, I think it was Shattered. Sheltered.
Split.
That's what it is. Split
was the name of it. Yeah.
Brilliant example.
Yeah, and Hide and Seek is another one.
American Psycho, right? American Psycho is about a guy who masquerades as a banker during the day, but at night he's killing people.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a guy who's.
it's so funny. I don't like stories like that usually. Like I really hated hide and seek. Split was really well done, but I had some issues with the story in general. But yeah, like I usually don't like stories where it's like, surprise, there's really no monster. It's just this person the whole time, which I get the scariness of that, of like, we're all monsters inside. Like I get that. But I don't usually like that, except in William Wilson, which is another one of Poe's stories that sort of thing happens. Sorry, yeah, spoilers. But yeah,
well, like, I think we're dealing with 100 and what is it, almost a 90-year-old pieces of work. These definitely can be spoiled.
Yeah, that's true. It's been a minute. But yeah, William Wilson is like that, where you have this character who everything is good and life is great and he's really fortunate, and he's got like good education, good money, and again, descent into madness. There's this person that is always in his school or growing up with him or whatever, who makes him insane and just like drives him to insanity, and then he kills William Wilson, and then he's in fact killed himself, and it's like, what has just happened?
Exactly what happens in every single one of his stories, I imagine, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is normally his motif.
Yeah.
I mean, he can't get away from it. And this is a guy that's writing before literary theory, right? This is a guy that's writing before writers are even aware that they're putting themselves on paper. So, I mean, he's confessing to shit. I mean, every single story he's confessing. I wouldn't be surprised. I think he was a horrible person. I think he was a terrible dude, because everybody in that time was a terrible dude. I mean, nobody was doing good stuff. Everybody was corrupt. I mean, you saw gangs in New York. You saw what we did in the Civil War. You know what people are willing to do and what they can get away with. I mean, there are immigrants coming off boats left and right. Nobody knows anybody. America is brand new. It's not even 50 years old yet, or is it? I mean, it's
very
terrible.
Young.
Very young.
And
everybody's fighting on the world. I mean, basically, the World War started right around that time, right? The French and Indian War started in like the mid-18th century, and everybody keeps fighting. Every decade, there's another gigantic war. And Edgar Allan Poe's right in the middle of it.
I'll take your word for it, because again, I'm a terrible student of history and I don't know my years of anything.
I mean, but how could he be a good person? I mean, I can't think of anybody who had ethics then that would have allowed them to be good.
We're getting into such deep territory of like, what makes a good person good? What about outside factors? This is all so interesting. I love it.
Let's talk about, I mean, we're getting to an hour point. So, I mean, we'll just make this our last thing. I mean, and that time, was there some group that was doing altruistic work? I don't think so.
I think everyone's different shades of gray. And I mean, I don't know what kind of, internal demons, let's just go ahead and stick with that theme, like internal demons plagued Poe. I don't know if it was mental illness that was untreated. I don't know if it was something else.
It could have been lead poisoning, right? I mean,
maybe.
It could have been mercury poisoning. I mean, they did not have the faculties in place to protect themselves from these environmental dangers.
And they didn't know. They didn't realize how different things affected human beings. I mean, artists were forever licking their paintbrushes. So,
right. And what was that? That was copper poisoning, or?
Well, I think it was a number of things. Lead poisoning was one of them.
Yeah,
there was
one of them.
Mercury.
I think good paints come from different like ores and whatnot. So, I mean, they basically were just putting all types of metallics in their body.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. Like I don't think we can say for sure without knowing more of the details as to whether or not he was a good person or a bad person.
But he influenced my writing.
Indeed.
That's 100% certain. I mean, The Pit and the Pendulum, whether I actually know the story or not, is in my brain, like hardcore. I can actually pull that day from my memory. And it was in West Virginia, from all places. And I was so young now. I was like 3, 4, 5 years old.
Yeah.
Incredibly young. And why is it still there? I mean, that's just incredible. And The Raven, I mean, middle school, sitting in a classroom, that poem washes over me the rest of my life. I mean, there are very few things that actually kind of do that, I mean, Robert Frost kind of does that, and I think he did The Wall, other stuff. I mean, things kind of stick, but Edgar Allan Poe, the things that I know about him, they stick. He's a character.
They really do. Whatever magic he has in his writing, it is beautiful and pervasive and perfect.
Perfect? Or do we just consider him perfect? Because, I mean, dude, you talked about the guy who wrote the letter, right? Wrote something. It was really debasing. It was horribly insulting to Edgar Allan Poe.
Got his editor and the person who like kind of handled his affairs. I don't know what that's called. But yeah,
they collected his work, right? They did the collected works of Edgar Allan Poe, and there was like a thing in the very beginning that said this guy's an asshole.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
right, I mean, but you got to check out this work. Isn't that what he said? I hated this guy. This guy sucked. He was an
amazing writer. He was terrible to know in person.
And why is that? He's an alcoholic, isn't he? He was a terrible, terrible person to deal with. You couldn't count on him probably. He probably would hurt you in a heartbeat if he was drunk or hungover or alive.
I would love to know. I would love to have accounts from people who did interact with him on a daily basis, just to get those stories of like what he was actually like.
I mean, morose, right?
Oh, for sure.
Who was he? Yeah, I mean, do we have anything like that? We don't, do we? Because while he was alive, who cares about Edgar Allan Poe? We have the Raven.
Right.
Jesus was the byline underneath the Raven. You know, we don't care about him. Who is this dude? Just keep writing your stupid poems and let us read them.
Right.
I mean, we care now about, you know, Stephen King's legacy because Stephen King's legacy is part of his marketing gimmick, you know? Mm-hmm. We want to know about his experiences with Carrie and how he threw it away and his wife saved it for us.
Right.
You know, and there's the history. What's the history of Edgar Allan Poe? Potentially he murdered his first wife, felt guilty about it the rest of his career.
You were casting some serious aspersions.
He's dead. He can't sue me. I don't care. I don't even know if anybody says this, but this is just my opinion. I mean, what do you think? He's just a depressed guy that came up with this stuff from out of nowhere?
I think he was definitely had trouble adapting to society. I think he definitely had maybe some mental issues as far as like mental illness that went untreated. Because I mean, we all know what, you know, we've seen what happens when mental illness doesn't go untreated. And I don't know if there was a stigma about it back then. I don't even know if they were aware of what it was back then. So I think, you know, there was probably an element of that. And I'm sure like the drinking didn't make things any better, but I think he probably had some unresolved issues before even the drinking.
And what are those issues, right? I mean, he grew up rich. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously people are born, maybe this is an incorrect way to say it, but mentally deficient. But
I do think that's an incorrect way to say that.
There's a really politically correct or non-politically correct way to say that. But I mean, why? Was he so unable to be a normal person? And when did he start drinking? When did he become a lush? When was he not able to finish college? You know, I mean, college was not a hard thing then. As long as you knew how to read, they were going to give you some basic algebra tests and you were going to hang out with your friends and you were going to graduate eventually, right? I mean, it wasn't probably too difficult to graduate.
I'm guessing.
Why couldn't he do it?
I don't know. So yeah, these are all good questions. We should go back in time. We should invent a time machine and go back in time.
Well, if I do that, I want to go have a conversation with Julius Caesar.
There you go. Do that. Are you going to warn him? Would you warn Julius Caesar? Hey, watch out.
What happens if you warn Julius Caesar? That's a whole nother podcast.
The whole world changes.
But isn't Augustus just basically Julius Caesar too? And you just lose the triumvirate, the stupid little war they fought. And then you have Mark Antony still alive, and he was a good guy, having sex with everybody.
Yeah. I don't know.
Caesar
maybe
included.
it would change the whole world.
I know I love What If history. Love it so much. I like to deal in Revolutionary War What If history right now, but I still have yet to finish anything long in that particular genre. Whoa! I lost my earbuds. Hold on a second. Well, this is honestly a fantastic conversation. I'm so happy that you were willing to hang out with me and
absolutely
and do this. I've lost my daughter. I have no clue who she is. What are you doing, Lindy? I'm so happy that you were willing to do this. I'm so sorry that it was so chaotic and stressful this whole time.
No worries.
To kind of have a conversation. Hope to do it again though too. I mean, if you're willing, I like to have. Yeah. Let's do it, man. Anytime you have a topic you want to talk about, just let me know. Go monthly if you want.
Okay.
It's up to you.
Yeah, I'll have to think on it because you're not a fan of talking about Jane Austen. You are not for that idea.
No, let's do it. I'll talk about her.
Are you sure?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Well, next time we'll talk about Jane Austen.